Naffi, the Associate Professor and Shareholder, Université, Laval, and the panelists to this stage. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our panel, Intelligent Learning, How AI is Redefining Education. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today to explore one of the most important transformations of our time, how artificial intelligence is reshaping not just how we learn, but also what we learn, and ultimately how knowledge itself is being created, accessed, and understood. We're fortunate to have with us 4 remarkable leaders who bring deep insight into this intersection of AI, ethics, education, innovation, and workforce development. So welcome to my dear panelists, and I'm going to start with, actually, I'm going to let them introduce themselves with one sentence about what excites you the most about AI's potential to transform learning in classrooms, at work, or across society. So let's start with you.
Well, this is a great opportunity, and that's the word I want to use, opportunity for everyone from faculty, staff, and students in the university setting to enhance their capability. And the key word I want to say is enhance. We can all be better, we understand that, but this tool, AI, allows us to strengthen and improve ourselves.
Thank you. Monika.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here because I think AI really helps with scaling global impact and the pace of scaling that. And I work a lot with hackathons, so you cannot imagine a hackathon without AI for the past decades. And that will be my main approach to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Delighted
Colleen.
to be here. Thank you, esteemed panelist. I am Colleen Lyons, and my background is I was at IBM and Gartner as an account executive and also helping build a business. I was a senior ethics advisor at Boeing while the planes were falling from the sky. I ran 2 ethics consultation services at 2 very large Veterans Administration hospitals in the US, and I'm currently at the Food and Drug Administration, and part of my work is being an AI ethicist. Want to be very clear that my thoughts are my own, and I'm not representing the United States government. All of my work has been a change management initiative more than anything else. And I consider AI to be a change management initiative. So with that as a backdrop, there's an enormous opportunity for AI in education to democratize education, to help faculty be more impactful with their students, have the administration cut some overhead in a fiercely financial situation right now, which has been exacerbated by some of the US policies for funding in academia. So there's an enormous opportunity there, and we'll talk about the ethical concerns later.
Thank you. Go ahead, Loni.
Hi, everybody. My name is Loni Mahanta. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel of an organization called aiEDU. We focus on ensuring that all kids are ready to live, work, and thrive in a world where AI is everywhere. Prior to joining aiEDU, I'd been in the tech industry for many years, leading tech policy functions, companies like Lyft, Zillow, OpenSea, and now I'm focused at aiEDU really on how do we help prepare K through 12 education systems, students, teachers, and the systems as a whole for the coming AI world.
Thank you for my panelists. So let's start with a philosophical question. And I'm going to let you jump in, right? Like with no order, you decide who wants to get things rolling. If AI systems are now shaping how we learn, what happens when they begin to shape what we learn? And ultimately, who gets to define knowledge itself and our relationship to it, especially in an era of deepfakes and synthetic media?
Well, I'll come right into that. And by the way, je m'appelle Kevin Jones. Bonjour. Basically, I do not think that it has to shape us, okay? Because what we have is domain knowledge. We, as academics, have a lot of experience, knowledge, you name it, we have. Why do we need to turn it over to AI? Well, we need to turn to AI, as I started talking about, because it can enhance and strengthen. It cannot replace. Well, now some people say it can replace, but I reject that notion that it can replace because AI cannot have the experiences I have. AI has information, but it cannot talk about what I've experienced and what I've seen, who I've worked with, who I've interacted with, how I interact. So again, the premise is AI and people with AI in collaboration.
Anyone want?
Yeah. So I also have taught at a medical school for the past 15 years, and I teach clinical research ethics. And I think, one of the first things we need to think about is what is, as faculty, but also as an academic administrator, for example, we have to think about what our own personal philosophy is as we engage with our students. So my teaching philosophy is that I'm there to help develop values-driven leaders in their academics, but out to help public health and patient health and safety. That's the first thing that I'm responsible for. And the second thing is to teach them that persuasive arguments are grounded in facts and values. And opinions are great at a cocktail party, but they have no business in either academia or when you are trying to persuade values-based policy or actions. So that's where it starts. And that's, with that as a grounding, what you do is, or what you're able to do, and what I'm doing with my students now, is to figure out how to incorporate AI to leverage the best of it, because there's phenomenal stuff that can be done. But my fear is that we're going to end up with plastic academics. And if we don't have the rigor that Kevin talked about and that I have, who saw Wendell Wallach this morning? Anybody see him? So he is a prototypical oracle. He's, I don't know, late 70s, he's been an academic, and he's grounded in very thoughtful points of view, and he doesn't screed, but what he does is speak truth to power, and it's based on his academic credential, and it's based on his personal values. My fear is that if we outsource our thinking to AI, we won't have the Wendell Wallachs of the world in the future, and it would be an enormous loss.
I can bridge that when it comes to academia and industry, because we've been always in between with Openhack 2020 Australia. When it comes to hackathons and more, so going from research to actually making an impact, I noticed two essential things: creativity, which you can encourage or you can diminish with technology, and critical thinking. And I think critical thinking is essential in times of AI. Something that is embedded in quite a few curricula worldwide these days in schools and universities, talking about global citizenship education, for example, where critical thinking is the essence for anything. Checking your sources, resources, and doing background checks. I think that's essential, especially when you use AI. Now, creativity, on the other hand, it's quite a fascinating topic because when using digital tools, especially AI-based tools, you need to think that the way you use it in classrooms, both in schools, universities, and also in future workplaces, so also in workplaces where you try to upskill your employees, you need to think which tools are actually helping to save time on very basic tasks where maybe creativity is not essential, and which tools are actually encouraging people to use the time more precious and facilitate the actual creativity process, brainstorming, for example, team building, instead of spending a lot of time on administrative tasks, which are not really helping people to become more creative. So I think there's several things one can think, and lifelong learning is the essence in the time of AI. because without it, none of us would be here, to be honest. And I think lifelong learning is the essential skill that all employers should be focusing on facilitating in their workplaces. And at university level, for example, hackathons are currently being more and more often used because it's a very hands-on approach, how to make people use, for example, AI tools. And recently we also started doing no-code hackathons, AI hackathons, where we encourage people with different backgrounds, people that have never coded before, to actually try and use AI tools in very short times and see what kind of results you can come up with.
Thank you. Go ahead, Loni.
You asked about who gets to define knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think about that as being about a lot more than just about accuracy and accurate information. I think about that as being also about trust, authority, power. And that's where I come to our need to center human judgment. And we're talking about similar concepts here. But centering humans has to be a piece of this puzzle. How we think about values, norms, what we want young people in particular to think about, that's a societal responsibility, something we can't outsource to algorithms, to AI. At the organization where I work, at aiEDU, we focus on that. We talk a lot about the human advantage. Other big concepts that we really focus on are around AI literacy, which we think about as the foundational knowledge to understand what AI systems are, how they're built, understanding bias, ethical implications. And then we also talk and help students think about AI readiness. And that's the broader set of skills that are needed to help to thrive in a world where AI is ubiquitous. And this brings us to concepts that are not new terms. These are things we've heard here talk about: critical thinking, durability, resilience. We believe that those in the rapidly changing world, those still are going to be the places where humans need to stay involved. If we're going to succeed, if young people are going to succeed, those are the tools that they need. And that, I think, is a huge part about how we navigate what remains consistent, who gets to define what knowledge is ensuring that we keep a human-centered approach.
Yeah, absolutely. There were two panels, actually, two presentations before, one on creativity where you were talking about human and AI, and we had examples about how human and AI can collaborate to bring something very interesting. And then we had another presentation about deepfakes, and it was like 51% of people who will not be able or not able to really find out that this is actually fake. So in a world where we're actually really advancing with this technology and knowledge is being polluted with some fakes, I think everything that you brought up is very important. Do you have anything other to add about? Yeah.
Yes, from this very stage last year, I talked about a key competency we need to develop is discernment. Now, some people conflate discernment with judgment. Yes, we need judgment too, but discernment's a little bit different. And so with discernment, it's a form of critical thinking. It says we're able to look at something that's true and something that's not true and distinguish. And you say, well, how do we distinguish when it looks real? Well, okay, this is a real situation. A student showed me something that Barack Obama had said. And I said, okay, let's look at this. Okay, I looked at it. I said, let's find where he gave this speech. Couldn't find it. What was the source of this particular video? Oh, that's interesting. Never heard of that person. And so, see, we have to, going back to that word rigor, we have to teach rigor. And discernment requires rigor. It says just because you see a video doesn't mean it's true. And this is a change, a generational change. And again, I say generational, going back to my generation, when we used to say, if it's on TV, it must be true. Well, if it's on the internet, it's true, right? Well, we learn over time that we have to go beyond what we see to understand, and that's discernment.
Yeah. So I'm going to move to my other questions because I'm looking at time. Monika, AI is often called a great equalizer, and you talked about all the different activities, yet many worry it could deepen digital divides. From your perspective, how do you ensure AI becomes a force for equity, not inequality? So what role can grassroots innovation hackathons that you shared and local talent play in reshaping access to AI-powered education?
I think that's an essential question these days, thinking about the pace, how the Sustainable Development Goals are being fulfilled or not, and thinking about one of the goals, education, and how it's lagging behind, especially after pandemic, how it was hit the hardest. I think that the basics when it comes to access to AI, for example, and opportunities that AI brings together, comes back to the basics of having access to electricity, mobile phone, and internet connection. Because without these three things, you cannot really do much with AI. And I think we're talking about majority of population that lacks access to this, which is quite ironic on one hand. On the other hand, many people forget about how we are so privileged to be here today, online or face-to-face, and actually get opportunities to learn about AI. So I think the essence goes back to also big corporates doing a lot of investments in doing initiatives, local initiatives, where they invest their resources to build infrastructure, for example, for as basics as electricity or internet connection. I think that really paves the way for majority of people to benefit from the opportunities of AI and digital economy age.
Yeah, going back to the basics, really. Thank you. Kevin, you emphasize integrating AI across the university enterprise. What does meaningful institution-wide transformation look like beyond just adopting tools, right? You talked about the collaboration, human and tools. What structure or cultural shifts are most urgent to support faculty upskilling? And you talk a lot about systemic changes, right? So systemic AI integration.
Yes, like my colleague, Dr. Lyons over here, I'm a change management person. And when you hear the word change, the first thing you go is, what's in it for me, all right? What's in the change for me? That's how we are. Well, this is part of what we have to make the case. We have to show in higher ed that there is a value for, we'll say, faculty. What is the value for faculty? You can't just say, well, AI will make things better and it's, students are using it and so we need to learn it too. Where we have to do is we have to get to the mind of the faculty member to help them see it from their lens of understanding. How can this really enhance my pedagogy? How can this enhance my student outcomes? How can this benefit society? Whatever. So it starts with a planful approach to change. Dare I say transformation. It says that you have to identify, here are the pathways we can take to get to desired outcomes which align with what most faculty members think. So you cannot make change, you cannot make transformation until you start with, watch this, people and how they think. Understanding how people think then gives you the lens in which to identify the changes that will enable them to embrace the change.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Colleen, what are the most urgent ethical dilemmas you see in AI's rise in education, particularly across students, faculty, institutions, and industry? Do you see any promising frameworks to navigate these tensions while preserving academic integrity and public trust?
Yes, I have my framework, which is brilliant. I actually think that first of all, we have to have an objective accounting of what the ethical issues are in higher education. And even looking at AI itself. AI is not some blob. There's the development, the deployment, the implementation of it, there are many aspects of AI. So the first thing we need to do is truly understand what it is that we're talking about. And this happens at an organizational or an academic institution, because what works at one institution is not going to necessarily work at another. So this takes that rigor and discipline and energy and intellectual honesty to say, okay, what is it that we're dealing with? Number one. Number two, what is our purpose? Because if the implementation of AI is about implementing AI and you have little starry eyes, just like we did back when the internet became invented, then we are going down a path of folly. And this ties to individual values, and that's what we need to negotiate. So I think the overall ethical issue that we have right now is that we are not being intellectually honest in the academic community. Can I just go back to one thing that Monika said?
Go ahead, of course.
I am so glad that I have my point of view on the sustainability goals for a number of reasons, but we've talked as first world, perhaps first world of the first world of the first world notion of AI for the past couple of days. We can't help it. But there is the rest of the world that's living under maybe $2, $3 a day, et cetera. And if we are really able to unleash the true power of AI in education starting at the very youngest age, it is unbelievable as a tool to truly level the waterline. And I really would like to encourage all of you to start to at least think about it and then act on it. The reason why, if we want to have selfish view, when we have all these brilliant minds helping us solve these world problems, we are going to be a whole lot better off than having a first world of the first world of the first world that is geographically confined pretty much. We're going to lose. So why not use AI to win with all of this incredible human capital? So thanks for bringing that up.
And I also have just to run real quick. You brought up systemic thinking is what you're talking about. We have to be able to think not just of one thing. We have to think about how all things are connected together. Because as we think about how things are connected together, it allows us to have a broader way of understanding how AI can impact.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Loni, so how can we bridge the growing gap between what learners are taught and what AI-driven workplace actually demands? So what are some concrete ways institutions can collaborate with industry to co-design relevant AI-aligned learning paths?
At the outset, I think we have to have a shared understanding of what we're talking about. What are those skills that are needed for the workforce? The reality is that things are changing extremely rapidly. And we don't know exactly how jobs are going to be changing. I think one of the things that we need is a lot more data on an analysis of like actual jobs in the workforce and how they're changing. That's going to come, our organization is partnering with the labor economist to find that work, as are many other organizations. As it relates to schools and what we know now, we start our work with an AI readiness and AI literacy framework. And that kind of breaks down what the skills and tools are for students, for teachers, and for school systems. If anyone's curious, I can share it with you. You can get it on our website. But it's very concrete. I know we're talking a little bit in abstractions right now, but there are very concrete ways to think about what it means to sort of to be ready in this world. So I think that's first. Second, we need to think about building capacity. This technology is changing so rapidly. A year ago, we were talking a lot about prompt engineering. Imagine if we had focused on that as the skill that young people, for instance, needed to master in order to utilize AI tools. That's obsolete already, right? You can navigate this very intuitively. Prompt engineering is still part of the conversation, but much less than it was a year ago. So we don't know, we can't think about this in a static way. These are things that are changing quickly, and we need to help think about problem solving sort of at a broader level. That's the only way we're going to navigate what's to come. And then the third part here is around this really being a systems issue. We're going to come back a lot of these same terms again. What we are seeing sometimes in schools and school districts is this thinking about AI in the school as like a CS issue, as a computer science issue. We're going to really miss the mark if we silo AI in schools through the CS lens. This is something that applies across disciplines and has to be approached across disciplines. We also recognize what we see oftentimes are certain school districts or certain teachers who are being really creative and who are thinking about this. Their students really benefit from that. But that certainly isn't going to get to all young people. So there has to be some level of top-down engagement in order for us to ensure that it's not just the privileged and the curious who get access to these tools. Without that sort of, the grassroots, the people that are interested, and then the top-down to kind of create policy, we're not gonna meet this moment. And how many young people are going to be left behind? How much further is this digital divide going to separate? And then you asked the question about sort of engagement with industry. I think about this a lot through the lens of co-creation. The most successful examples that we've seen of AI integrated into the classroom really brings together teachers, students, and communities. So there's an incredible teacher that we've worked with out of Colorado who's incredible. He's phenomenal and really creative in his own right. A lot of this has nothing to do with us, and he's driven a lot of this, although we were engaged. One of the projects that he worked on was a voter guide. He polled the students, talked about what they cared about, and during the election, they decided that they wanted to create a voter guide for non-native English speakers to help kind of navigate a complex ballot. After the election had passed, he was then working on another project where he was helping non-residents in the U.S. help their kids navigate FAFSA, which is sort of a education scholarship, federally funded program. He was really upfront with his students. He's like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what we're going to do. But because the students created the idea, it was something that mattered for their community, and they were working together to figure out what they could do, what they could come up with on the back end. That's a really great way to create that critical thinking, to see if the output that they're getting is actually useful or not. Problem solving and critical thinking. So that's like one example of co-creation that I think helps bring some of this to the fore. Another version of co-creation is we work a lot in rural and indigenous communities. There we've realized that a lot of our initial approach really does not work in some of these communities. First, remote learning is not something that meets expectations of education in a rural or indigenous community. For learning to be integrated, it really needed to be led by trusted elders or trusted community members in person. Great. We will help train those people, and they will do sort of culturally appropriate training in their own communities. And then the last thing I'll mention is that we do work with, later this year we're going to be doing a Maker Fair, where industry partners, big tech companies, are going to be working with young people to kind of do some more of these projects. I think these are some examples of sort of co-creation, but that working together of all these different communities is critically important, because I don't think we're going to get the outcomes that we want if it's just the big companies that are driving what happens here.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure to leave time for questions. I'm an educator, and transmissive is not what you want to do. We want to make sure to have time for questions and that you can actually interact and ask your questions to our panelists. So prepare your questions. I have two last very quick questions. One that was prepared, the other one emerged now while we were talking, and based on our small prep when we first met in the speaker lounge.
Hi,
we
Mr.
were
Marc-Antoine.
all of us
Can you
thrilled
hear me?
that there's actually an educational panel in the World Summit AI.
Okay,
so maybe
I
in a
can't hear
couple
you
of
now
words,
because
why
on the
it's
meeting, but can you check the
ultra
chat?
important to
I
have
already have a
education
chat.
here
I'm trying
today.
to talk to you.
Go ahead.
Real simple. When people go into organizations, where do they come from? They come from educational systems. And so if we don't develop the capabilities, the competencies, the character of people for organizations, well, what are you going to recruit?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can add on to that. I think
Okay,
it's all
I have
about
one question.
sustainability if
Is
we're
Mr.
thinking
Yeshua
about the
gonna
development
have
of
a
education
question,
forward.
question and
Because
answer session?
we're here today, but tomorrow the world might look very differently, also based on the pace that I mentioned at the very start of the discussion. And I think that is an exciting challenge because we all get to be part of the solution in this. And well, systematic issues were mentioned before, but I believe that each of us build the systems that we're part of. So therefore, each of us should take action and build the future that we want to see happening.
Thank you. Colleen.
I believe that the reason why education should be here is that it's our future. And the educational system, from the little tots up through PhD students, are the ones that are going to challenge the existing norm to make it better through values-based innovation at a personal level.
Our young people are our future. Yeah. It's as simple as that in some ways. I think we did a disservice to a lot of our youth by dropping a lot of technology on them with no guidance. And we've seen that in the past with social media and sort of other access to technology that we sort of just handed over, unleashed. Let's not repeat those problems. Let's take a much more thoughtful approach to how we are introducing and engaging young people with this transformative technology. If we do that, the opportunity is huge. But without that engagement, we run a lot of risk.
Mr. Marc-Antoine, can you answer me on the chat?
We've spent,
Because
as an organization, spent a lot of time at education conferences. And we were like, everybody at education conferences are already talking about AI in education. But are these conversations happening at other types of AI conferences? And I think to the earlier points here, this is not something that any one organization can do. If we want systems level change, we need engagement from everybody. Everybody here needs to be talking with, if you've got kids, talking with your own schools and your own communities. This is the way we're going to kind of get to the outcomes that we want.
Absolutely. I'm going to just ignore my last question and see if there's any questions from our audience. Yeah. So we have, do you have the mic? Yeah. Thank you.
I am also an educator, and every semester or every school year, we scramble to get our students to fill out the FAFSA. It's a DOE requirement. So my question is, where can I find information that gentleman that you shared?
Well, I will get your contact information. I will share with you. His incredible teacher's name is Zach Connolly. He's out of the Colorado Public School Districts. And this project that he's working on is happening right now, so I don't think it is completed yet, but I will find out where it is.
There's another hand behind. Yeah.
While we're getting to him, around the ethics question, FAFSA applications, for example, is an opportunity for bias to be used, and that's why we really need to understand the algorithms for a whole host of reasons, and FAFSA is just one example of where in integrated bias, that's an objective term. Bias is not a judgment, it's empirical.
So you confirm there is no question at the end.
FAFSA and getting some help
I will transfer that
and
to
it is an opportunity for us to deploy AI agents. Okay, so I'll leave it at that.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I work in the career planning service at McGill University, and I just wanted to tie together a couple of things that you talked about. One was the need to teach critical thinking, and the second one was the rapid pace with which technology is changing and how something that we might teach, like a hard skill that we might teach one year, might be kind of obsolete by the next year. So as the value of education is being questioned around the world, and a lot of people are looking to education more as a job training program, how do education systems regain some of that trust with society, where we're losing trust in the education system to teach, or the value of teaching critical thinking and trying to move it towards just a job training program?
Well, let me tackle that right away. Part of it is on us, because we have, we kind of like to, and I say we, and being a higher education person, we like to be proud of our domain knowledge, what we've learned, ED, past. We have to become fluid learners where our disciplines, our learning continues to grow and evolve. In other words, we can never stand still in our learning. And to build connection with community,
I just
we
want to
have
confirm with you that
include community.
you hear
That's right, not just
what happened.
students, but we have to be out
Do you hear
in the
me?
community and sharing what we're learning. And then the real
Okay,
hard one
now I hear
for
you.
some of us,
Just
not all of
to
us,
let you know
not the
that
majority,
I will
but some
open
of
the
us
sound of
academics
the
is
meeting
to
room
listen
that you will,
to what
when the MC
students,
talk, that give you
community,
the,
and others are
give you the
saying.
floor to start
That
talking.
can build credibility when we can now share with them what we can help them with. But it's a partnership, it's a collaboration. It is no longer, I am the scholar of organizational management. You come to me for knowledge.
Okay.
If we stay that way, we will not exist.
I can second that because I've been also part of quite a few collaborations in Europe, also collaborating European academics with African and worldwide. And I noticed as well the main struggle was actually the mindset, the fixed mindset of people in power positions, how to reshape the whole educational system on academic level, for example, universities, and it's a very cultural thing as well. And it's really tricky to facilitate these cross-cultural collaborations with multidisciplinary learning when you have very fixed mindsets. So I think open-mindedness is the first thing to think about when going forward, because it sounds very easy, it sounds very easygoing and simple, but actually it's usually the main cause of any challenges that we're currently seeing in academia, with industry partners, and also from the student side, because there has to be middle ground, and I think being on the same level is the only way forward, especially when it comes to talking about AI, technology, where usually students even know much more than professors these days. So absolutely. And one more thing, many universities already has capacity to be there, but again, the mindset. Many people in power positions, they hesitate until it's too late. And we've seen that with pandemic as well. Digitalization was the main issue, and many universities could have done that already way before that, but they had to have this push towards only digital in order to actually become digital, even though capabilities were already there.
Yeah, so our time ran out. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for our panelists.